Now we have here in our handout a long list of policies that were considered, most of which separated easily into either administrative or governance. There were, however, a couple, I think 10, that are on the fence, either that they deal with both or they were unsure. So perhaps it might be worth a few minutes to have someone from that committee to just give us a little report on that. Who participated in that?
I did.
Councillor Creed, would you give us an update?
Yeah, I want to just clarify, first of all, the difference between whether it's, council, governance, or administrative. Doesn't really matter what the policy is so much. It's whether, if it's a governance policy, it means that when administration is going to perfectly write up the policy, but then he'll have to bring it to council for a council approval of that policy. The ones that we've designated as administrative is what we're saying administration can write, can tweak, can modify, and he doesn't have to bring it to council for approval. So when we're looking at these policies, technically we could say, no, we want to have our fingers on all of them. We don't feel that we need to have our fingers on all of them. But as we discuss these policies, that's the question we want to ask ourselves. Does council want to have the final say on these policies, or do we trust administration to write these? And we tried to make the decisions that on that basis. So
we appreciate your work there.
Yeah.
Just for clarification, the ones labeled review are scheduled to come before this council for review at some later date. Is that correct, Jeff?
There were ones that we thought they need to get reviewed irrespective of where we categorize them. That they're outdated, they've got some problems. That was kind of when we were going through the list, we were making notes saying, that one's got to get fixed either way.
Okay.
So that's largely when we had that by there. We thought we need to designate it, and it also needs fixed.
So if we designate something administrative and then we decide to review it, you'll probably just review it without consulting us once we've designated it.
Correct, but what happens when we did a policy on how we were going to manage this last meeting? I have to report that to you in my CEO report. Yes. So anytime I amend, create, or get rid of an administrative policy, I still have to report that to council, so that you're aware if that's enforced or not.
And if we don't agree, then we can make a change at that point.
And that's the other thing to council. You can take any of these back into council purview.
Right.
At the end of the day, if you're saying, look, we're getting 100 complaints about this, we don't like how you're doing it administratively, Jeff, if you're not going to get around to our way of thinking, that's going to become a council policy.
That's cell phone management is atrocious.
But that's how that's going to work, right? So you always have oversight of the policy.
So it doesn't really sound like it's a big issue.
It's just what we ran into. It happened with our purchasing policy. We had the smallest little thing we wanted to tweak, and I thought, oh, well, we got to take this to council and go through that process where I could have just tweaked it. The risk is I don't want to tweak things every time I'm just trying to cater to a specific situation. There's a risk there, and that's why we put the reporting mechanism in.
Councillor Bengry.
Jeff, there's a whole gauntlet of stuff that is put into your trust by council. Mm-hmm. And it is council's feelings that if you are in doubt, you will come back to council. And that's that trust relationship. So I think we need to look at these. Councillor Creed has sat on that committee, and if he feels comfortable with that, and we have a quasi-judicial committee formed to review these things, we need to stamp accordingly.
I was just going to say, in regard to a comment you made about tweaking purchasing, you already have your parameters how much you can spend without coming back to council anyway. If it goes over that, you're going to come to us anyway. So
he has to.
In that regard, we have no problem. We have no issue here.
Mayor?
What I really observe that in many of those policies, it's really the work of administration, really, is day-to-day administration work.
Yeah.
And so I really think that when the duties of the CAO are listed and when we do our review, all those are already covered.
Yeah.
inside that list of duties that he does by the nature of being the CEO?
Councillor?
I'm prepared to make a recommendation to council that we accept the division that's been accepted here, and then the ones that are the unknown ones, let's have a further discussion of that. We're crunched for time tonight, so maybe that would be a way of getting most of it off the table and still allow us to have a deeper discussion on the ones that are questionable.
Right, Councillor Creed.
Yeah, I just want to make one more comment. One of the criteria that we tried to use in selecting was if the policy deeply affected public relations with the citizens of the town, then it should be one that the council would approve. If it had to do mostly with, the public works or parks or internal workings, we felt like administration, and we made those administration policies. So that was kind of one of our main criteria that we used in choosing which policy went where.
That's good. Now, if I may, before we jump on a recommendation, I do believe administration is planning something for our next agenda related to this.
So the thought was if there wasn't anything terribly offensive to anyone around the table, then we would prepare, and it's obviously an incredibly complex motion here. So what we were going to prepare was a motion that simply we would attach the motion we would attach the schedule to the minutes, and that would be noted in the motion. So we'd make a table saying, we approve the division here too as attached to the minutes, which will hereafter be attached to the minutes, designating policies as committee or as council and as administration, and go from there, because to read all those off and have that in a motion in minutes is obscene. So we'll do up a schedule and we'll attach it in perpetuity with the minutes was the plan. Now those 10 in the middle, I did make some recommendations on what I thought after we had met as a committee, Councillor Edmonds, Councillor Creed and I went through them again and thought, we can split a couple, I can make some administration, this one's probably bad. I made my recommendations. If there's no one offended by those, there's some I'm not going to have ready for next week because we're going to have to split them and make a council policy and a council protocol and an administrative procedure. They're not going to be ready. So we may have this small cluster that are just going to, over the next month, before the election, we'll get them all tidied up. But it's a small cluster.
And then on that, would you prefer a recommendation from this committee tonight, or are you okay with holding off?
I don't care if there isn't any direction to change any of this.
Okay.
So if you've got saying, look, I disagree with these 7, tell me.
Right.
And direct administration to go back to the drawing table on those. Otherwise, we'll prepare a more complex motion.
Okay, Councillor.
If required, I'll make a motion to table the policy review committee recommendations until the council meeting of September, whatever.
Don't think we need a tabling, just as long as nobody.
Except that Councillor Barfuss.
I've already got a recommendation on the table.
So we just need to withdraw
I'm prepared to
it.
withdraw that recommendation and just let it
What needs
go.
to
Because
Yeah.
basically what I'm saying is I'm
Okay.
in favor of what's been put in front of us here.
All right.
So
That's voted on in the council meeting.
with
Yeah,
that,
properly anyways.
with that withdrawn, we'll go ahead and get this on our next council meeting.
Okay.
Next, we have 6B, which is the private land development policy adjustment. This is an amendment. We directed administration to go, considering some of the things we've seen come before us recently, we felt like amendments were necessary. We'll entertain any thoughts or discussion on those amendments, and then maybe entertain a recommendation to change the policy accordingly. Mayor.
Personally, I feel that what has been put in yellow in our packet truly reflect the conversation we had last time at the table. And so I would be prepared to put a motion forward to, motion for council, a recommendation to accept the policy number P45-1 as amended.
Any discussion or questions on that? If not, we'll go ahead and vote on that. All in favor of that recommendation? Thank you. Unanimous. Moving on to 6C. This is a big one. However, it mostly deals with arbitration. No, the MGA comment review. Specifically, this is what they're looking for. Specifically, they want to know from this council if there's any, feedback that we want to put into them. So, having hopefully gone through it and reviewed what they shared here, and again, kudos to administration for doing their best to link this back to the actual act and show us the relevant connections. But is there anyone who had any thoughts or discussion parts or wanted clarification? If not, we'll go ahead and trust the AUMA to represent us. Yeah.
I just have a question. I read it all, and I think it's fairly comprehensive. What I'm wondering, according to this, when do we see the time frame for this draft to become policy or become part of the act to be followed?
I haven't
Do we
heard
have
of
a
our date.
sense?
Mm-mm.
So in
The
other
election
words,
is still the date they keep kicking around.
well, that's what I'm wondering. So the further comment is, do we as council, according to those recommendations that I made there, need to start to look at redrafting our code of conduct, which is the first thing that will need to be done?
Well, you'll have time, so I don't foresee that, hey, the MGA, now you're non-compliant. I don't foresee that at
So a
all.
window of compliance, a couple of years.
They want so much added to the code of conduct, I think it'll be they'll give you some time on that one. I wouldn't fear non-compliance right now.
Okay, so we can go, I mean, I looked at the different things. The only thing that we do not have
Right.
is what are the penalty if we do not, as council, follow the recommendations that are here. So that is something we
can
can
ask
look
Brown.
at.
Except for elections, doesn't it?
They had a little experience with that.
Well, I understand where it's coming from, right?
It's coming from Kronen.
So essentially what they're asking is before September 22nd, any feedback that we have, we can still, even after this meeting, direct administration with any
Yeah.
questions or concerns. So if there's no further questions tonight, we'll go ahead and move on to 7 other business. The first thing we have here is a request 7A, a request for a letter of support from our Victim Services Association. Now, this is a fairly new association in our area. We're grateful to those volunteers who have worked diligently to put this together. It's my understanding that there are victim service associations in other municipalities, and we finally got one here in Cardston to represent those victims of crimes and other things. And what they're looking for is a letter of support that they can then take to grant writing organizations and get some grants. Yes?
I organized a victim services unit back when the COP program was started. We dealt with a lot of victims of crime, but they were forwarded to the Blood Reserve and to Southern Alberta Victim Services out of Lethbridge. So is that what's going to happen with this Cardston Victim Services?
This is so that no longer has to happen. We'll have our own.
Well, it absolutely naturally happens. When you're dealing with victims on the reserve or off the reserve, it goes to Victim Services Blood Tribe.
Yes.
That's a good point, but we do not have the answer to this one.
We have victims that are not from First Nations too, so.
Right now, it's really to deal with people in town, and you could be either.
I'll move that we make a recommendation to council to write a letter of support for this organization.
Okay, so a recommendation has been made. Any other discussion on that? If not, we'll vote on that recommendation. All in favor? Thank you.
You're right.
All right, moving to 7B, we have a request from ATCO Gas to consider any change in the franchise fee. Let me just get this here. We have current rate as agreed on is 15%. Any increase that we would like to see from that will be a carry through back to our citizens and potentially considered a backdoor tax there. So, Councillor, or Mayor, sorry.
I'd just like to put forward a recommendation to council to keep the status quo
Keep status quo on the
regarding
ATCO
the
agreement.
franchise fee.
I think this
Well,
will be
I
discussed.
We discussed that, we decided
Seemed
that
to
we're
me we
gonna do.
already
Yeah,
decided
we just
that.
negotiated the contract,
we
but
have to have a
every year it
motion.
comes up for renewal, you have discretion to change.
Yeah.
Even though we're just months into the contract.
Right.
Yeah, well, I remember that meeting we had, we
Okay.
discussed that we were gonna leave
Yeah.
it.
Yeah, I thought that was
And I don't know if you need a motion for status quo, just leave it.
So
So
status
you,
quo.
okay, well
just leave
then
it.
I'll remove the motion.
Yeah,
I
just
think we
leave it.
decided it.
All right, there's no argument to status quo. 7C is a request regarding waste management initiative. And what they're looking for here is some support related to, what, studies? And they want a letter, sorry, let me just ask administration to speak.
It's
on that.
waste zeros, I want
Yeah.
the province to move towards that idea of.
What are they asking this council?
AUMA is putting a letter writing campaign together to local MLAs. And so they've sent a template and asked if councils will support their campaign by filling in the blanks on their template.
Yes.
It-
I just said scroll down.
And yes, it is support of continual, for one, and enhanced funding of recycling initiatives in the province.
And so, and
Can-
just to verify, there's no expense to us, they're just looking for a letter of support to those MLAs. Mayor?
If you remember, when we did our application to try to improve our recycling facility, we were turned down. And it's exactly what the UMA is trying to point as a weakness from the government perspective, who says we need to recycle, we need to reuse, we need to that, but there is no policy that guides
And no funding model. too.
and because there's no policy and guidance, there's no funding. Therefore, what we try to do at the municipal level is always at the cost of the
Municipal.
citizens. So it is very important, in my opinion, that the government, especially this government of all government, move forward to look for a recycling and a reuse, waste management policy. I really feel we should
You have a
support
motion
that.
you want to put forward, Mayor?
Yes. Move forward to send a letter of support to UMA.
Okay, so we've got a motion or a recommendation to direct administration to send a letter of support as requested here. Any other questions on that? If not, we'll go ahead and vote. All those in favor? Good. Unanimous again. 7D is a little bit of an
You guys are
interesting one.
laughing, there's no laughing matter.
I was just laughing.
We got shot down for quite a chunk of money.
And we had a good plan proposed, too.
Yeah.
7D is in response to a request made by this council to show comparables on waste collection fees throughout the region. This is here for information unless someone has something they want to discuss, keeping in mind that if you just look at our town, the 1075 is our roadside pickup collection fee. The $4 per, what was that, residence really, is our carry-through from Chief Mountain Solid Waste. So that's what that breaks down to
Management fee?
per residence.
Does that $4 included in the 10.75?
No.
Or is
No,
that
that's
additional?
additional
And
to.
then also,
So what we end up,
$1.50 recycling
Yeah,
Right.
fee is also in addition to.
yeah.
so we end up with, if you combine that administration fee, which is really the Chief Mountain fee, to the 1075, we're right at that $14, $15 mark, which is the median for the chart here.
We're at
Can I-
16 and a quarter, 16.
Could,
Well, that's what the $1.50.
Yeah,
The
that's-
recycling.
that's right there.
And we're, I mean, considerably low on that, in fact.
could,
But yeah, Mayor.
could I ask a question? Any reason why Raymond, for example, who is part of the same organization as we do, doesn't have any of those administration
included it all.
It's
charges?
just rolled into their,
Is it-
It's
all there.
We
We just
separate
break it out.
ours and theirs is inclusive,
correct.
right?
there was Councillor Creed, Edmonds, potentially Councillor Bengry, there was actually a specific discussion that council at the time wanted and broke out specifically on the bill.
Right.
They wanted to show garbage, Chief Mountain Waste Authority recycling specific on the NMAX bill. So in our bylaw, there's separate rates.
And that's how they show now.
Yeah.
Yeah, separate.
Yeah, they're separate rates on the bylaw.
Raymond also has the bins and the big bin trucks, so.
Yeah, but
We're
it's a
always getting
different
phone calls on the
kind
rates.
of pickup
Yeah.
anyways.
We're all inundated with.
I might add that might be something we might want to look at I understand the issues of transparency, but from feedback I get, it just looks like a whole bunch of lines of
No.
getting big dinged for everything
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
down the road.
yeah.
I
People
think,
get tired of
I think that's the
it.
reason why Raymond's opted to keep it all as just 1 fee. Is it just, the Joe Blow on the street doesn't care whether it's coming to the town or going to
No,
Chief
I think
Bell.
that it's a town taking more money, so I
Yeah.
really don't view it as being one bill, yeah. It's a good point.
So we can still show that we're cheaper than Raymond.
Yeah, but you don't offer exactly quite the same service either, right?
All right, there was some, thank you. If there's no other discussion on 7D, we'll move on. We elected to bump the 7E items into our next council discussions, and so we can move now to correspondence, unless there's any questions to come before council. If not, we have a thank you letter from Miss Woodruff for her Muddy Warrior grant and the successful event that she hosted here.
It's a lovely-
We've got 9B is a municipal letter letting us know that we got the grants that we already spent, so that's great. 9C is Stats Canada just telling us they're releasing the next bit of census information. This is the language information, so you can now go and review that if you're of interest. 9D is a request to proclaim the month of, is it September, Emily? September as Prostate Cancer Awareness Month. This is just a request. If there's an appetite for it, we'll hear yes, Councillor.
So this is actually one of those things that's sensitive to me. I have an uncle that's passed away from prostate cancer, and both my father and my other uncle have had prostate cancer. And I don't know if anybody knew, but the man van was in town last week.
Yep.
And it seems to be something that isn't talked about enough. It kind of feels in some ways the way breast cancer awareness was 20 years ago, and there's some catch-up that needs to be done there. Coming back to our policy, I don't know what we can do to further, by making a proclamation, to further the
Screening.
well, just to further the public awareness of it. Making proclamations for the sake of making proclamations isn't necessarily very productive. So without a policy or an idea of how you were going to use that, I don't know that it's a great idea for us to proclaim the month as prostate awareness month here locally. But I think it's important that we say the word, it's important.
To mark the fact that we're making something.
Can we just,
Okay.
can we just put it in like our monthly letter that, you know, we need to be aware of the screening vans in
Yeah.
town.
Well, and again, if this had come to us a month ago before the man van was in town, and we could use that as a way of,
Yeah, the timing was.
so maybe something for next year to be able to combine that more so that there's an event that can be put behind it, then I think that would be really great. As I'm not gonna be around on council, that's why I wanted to say something here right now. So that maybe next year, those who are on council could put this kind of in the back of their minds that this might be something worth looking at.
Worth some support.
Thank
that
you.
way. All right, yeah, thank you very much for that. It's certainly something that impacts a good percentage of our population, so. Looking now at 9E, this one's going to need some attention. There is a request that all of council attend the barbecue that is scheduled on the reserve at Standoff. This is on September 14th from 6:30 to 9 at the Great Hall adjacent to their civic building. Councillor?
Question is Blood Tribe Mayor, or Chief and Council aware of this barbecue happening?
They've been invited.
That's what the
Well,
letter says.
whether or not they've
Hopefully, you
RSVP.
know.
That's what the letter says.
I don't know.
It seems like, you know, anyway.
I think it'll be a good showing for us to go there and make ourselves available. That being said, I'm just speaking for myself, I personally plan to attend. Is there anyone else who, we've got here, Councillor, maybe just a poll around so we can RSVP appropriately. Councillor, you're going to go? That's all but you, Dennis? Can you make that one?
It depends, I was going to be going to Edmonton perhaps that same day. But I'm not sure if you're going to be that day or Friday.
Are you around, Councillor Barfuss, then?
I'm gonna be, yeah.
Okay.
That was a yes.
I'm going the day before.
Is it-
Start your drive to Edmonton at 9 PM.
No, thank you. I'll try and make it, I'll
Is
have to,
that a Thursday?
I'll have to respond back.
Yeah,
That's
No,
Thursday, the 14th is the Thursday.
I think
That's a
maybe-
week from this
I
Thursday.
think we'd be
Yeah,
safe,
yeah.
we'll go ahead and RSVP you, and then if something changes, we can
Yeah.
notify Jeff.
Yeah.
So that'll be 100% from Cardston Town Council.
So is somebody going to RSVP
I'll,
for us?
yeah, I'll call them, the
Thank you.
MP's office, yeah.
Excellent.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, thank you. So that takes care of 9E, which wraps up our correspondence, and leaves us with just a couple of, just one item for confidential 10B. So again, I'll entertain a motion to go in camera, and then we'll wrap it up. So over here, Mayor. Oh, thank you.
I put